It's almost here. The 7th annual Annapolis Film Festival opens on Thursday, March 21st in Annapolis and rolls on for 4 solid days. This year, the festival features more than 80 films along with dozens of panels, Q&A sessions, and yes, my favorite, the parties. Tickets and passes are available at AnnapolisFilmFestival.com, but right now we're diving in a little bit deeper and speaking with the faces behind the films, directors, producers, and actors. You want some insight to what you don't usually get? Well, here you go. Joining us today is Zachary Stauffer, and he is the director for a documentary film that's going to be screened at the Annapolis Film Festival called Who Killed Lieutenant Van Dorn, and that will be screening on Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. at the Annapolis Elementary School. How are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me, John.
Hey, thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're out on the West Coast now. You're showing your film at the San Luis Obispo Film Fest, and you're off to Fargo after this before you come to Annapolis, I understand.
Yeah, we have a little busy cluster of festival screenings right now this spring, which are late winter, early spring, which we're really excited about, and very much looking forward to getting to Annapolis for our screening on the 23rd. It's been a city that's been on our radar screen for a long time and a really important community to share the film in, both for the locals and for the midshipmen at the Academy, as well as faculty and leadership there. We think the film raises a lot of different things that civilians and military can both discuss.
Well, it does. I don't want to say a horrible name, but it's got a very compelling, a very striking name, is Who Killed Lieutenant Van Dorn? And Lieutenant Van Dorn is a graduate of the Naval Academy in 2007, and he was unfortunately killed in 2014 in a helicopter training accident off of Norfolk, wasn't it?
Yeah, correct. It was a frigid January morning, January 8th. One of those polar vortexes was gripping half the country, and Norfolk was very much in the midst of that. And they were doing an ordinary training mission, took off around 8 in the morning, and a fire broke out in the helicopter that sent them careening into the ocean. And Wes Van Dorn and 2 others were afloat on the surface for about 45 minutes before help arrived. And Van Dorn ultimately died at the hospital, but 2 others died on impact.
Basis of the film really is that this is not just and I would hate to say anything is a routine crash and a routine casualty. This is the most deadly aircraft in the U.S. military that he was flying, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the film really digs into this crash in particular. Wes was a pilot of a helicopter. It's the largest in the fleet. It's called the MH-53E Sea Dragon. It's virtually identical to a Marine Corps version, the CH-53E Super Stallion. And we were hearing the same kinds of stories about issues at squadrons and maintenance challenges on both sides in both branches, the Navy and the Marines. Ultimately just looked at this helicopter together, the 53E. It's run out of the same office. The same protocols apply to both sides, even if the missions differ slightly. And what we found is that 132 people have died on this helicopter over the years. Got introduced to the fleet in the early 80s. And based on flight hour statistics, that makes it the deadliest aircraft in the U.S. military. It has the highest death rate of any plane or helicopter or tilt rotor aircraft. So 132 people have died on this helicopter since it got introduced into the fleet. The Marine Corps version came online in the early 80s, and the Navy version came online a few years after that. But of those 132 people, none of those are a result of being shot down by enemy fire. These are not combat deaths. They're sort of ordinary mission and training accidents that have led to these deaths.
Well, how did you guys sniff this out or get in on this? How did this? What was the genesis of Who Killed Lieutenant Van Dorn?
So I'm based at an office called the Investigative Reporting Program, and we're a small newsroom and production facility run out of the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. And one of our graduate students at the time, Jason Palladino, was high school friends with Brian Collins, who was an air crewman who died on that flight. And Jason was at Brian's funeral. They grew up together in Truckee, California, near Lake Tahoe. And in conversations with other sailors who were there, Jason's journalistic instincts perked up. Something didn't smell right. He was hearing things about failing equipment and leadership problems. And this is not the image that the military likes to project to the public, and certainly those of us that are civilians would ever hear about. But that's what the sailors were talking about there. And they, as Jason has told me many times, they were talking about it as if this were avoidable, and things being done differently could have led to different outcomes. So that ultimately got us started. Jason opened up a collaboration with Mike Hicksonbaugh, who was a reporter at the Virginian Pilot on the military beat. He got in on this. Mike got started on this reporting right away. It happened right in his backyard. And then ultimately Jason brings this story into our office, and we help expand the collaboration, bring on NBC News, did a piece in 2015 on the nightly news. And then ultimately we realized that, hey, there might be even more that we can dig into. What else can this helicopter tell us about how defense works? What other problems can it point to, not just at the squadron level and things that Wes Van Dorn and his peers would have seen, but how does this tie into Washington? How does it relate to matters that affect the rest of the country? And that's when I got involved, and we started to really explore the idea of making a film on this subject. And, you know, after 2.5 years of production and post-production, we finally finished it up.
Well, I know that Lieutenant Van Dorn's widow, she jumped in on this, and she's not convinced that this was just a training accident either, or an unavoidable training accident. And she plays a key role in your film. Yeah, Nicole Van Dorn, Wes's widow, was instrumental in our process. She is a force to be reckoned with, and is somebody who I wouldn't want to stand in her way. She's a fighter, and she wanted to get to the bottom of her husband's death. They had countless dinner table conversations in which he would talk about maintenance issues and leadership problems at the squadron, and people not bringing, basically a phrase that he uses, they weren't practicing like they should play. You can't slouch through a sports practice and then expect to perform great in the Super Bowl, right? You need to be disciplined and on top of your game and doing your best and doing things by your own procedures that you set out for yourselves. And he felt that wasn't happening at the squadron. In a piece of audio tape that we found, he describes leadership as non-existent on certain issues. And obviously that runs counter to how we feel the military should operate. So in the aftermath of the crash, Nicole is reading the local newspaper, the Virginian Pilot, sees this article by Mike Hicksonbaugh, realizes that he's somebody who is not willing to just stop at the ordinary talking points, that he's willing to dig a little bit deeper and sniff stuff out himself. And she said, hey, look, I've got my husband's notebooks. I've got all these text messages we've exchanged over the years in which he's talking about aircraft not working. Let me show you what I've got, and maybe you can see if there's something else there. She told us in an interview that she was always willing to go after the messy answer, because that's the truthful answer. And that's what she was after. And I think the film takes up that mantle and shows just how messy that answer is. Did you have any issues with the military in producing this and getting this? I mean, did they stonewall you? The Navy and Marines gave us limited access when we were doing multimedia projects for the newspaper. But when it came to the film, when we were only working on the documentary, they declined us at every request. And I'd renew that request periodically, and they had no interest in participating. They say it's because we were an independent film and didn't have distribution in place, and that's their policy. But I'd remind them that the way that they could shape the story and actually have some input would be to participate, but they declined. We did get a retired Marine general to appear in the film. Well, that's a convenient policy for them, I think. Yeah, their interest seems to be avoiding the bad news until they have really no choice. And their interest in the film has basically been to ignore it and hope that it goes away, I think. But we're screening at festivals across the country. We're doing community events, and we really think that it's a story that people should see. The Gold Star families and other sources who have seen the film really want higher ups in the Navy and in government to see the film
because they feel it's an important issue to address, that the systemic issues that are at the root of crashes like the one we explore need to be looked at in a serious way in order to avoid these accidents in the future. And pretending the film doesn't exist and pretending these accidents don't have connections to each other, I think is disappointing, to say the least.
And, well, certainly I think you've got a good audience here in Annapolis, and some people call us a military town. I guess we are, but I typically don't see it more of as a college town. But we've got our future naval leaders that are coming out of here year after year after year, and certainly something to keep an eye on. I mean, there has to be some systemic changes in the military as the military continues to grow. We look at the changes that have evolved over the years, and hopefully this is something that would get a conversation going, get people just to take a look and have an eye out of this.
We'd very much welcome folks from the Naval Academy, both midshipmen and faculty and leadership there, to come check out the film and engage with us on the issues that it raises. We, just a couple of weeks ago, did a screening for the Naval ROTC program at UC Berkeley, where I showed the film to 40 midshipmen, all in uniform. And, that doesn't mean that the commanding officer, the captain who brought us there, endorses every aspect of the film. You don't have to agree with every aspect of it, but it does raise some serious leadership and ethics questions that are exactly the kind of thing that we would want our future military leaders to begin wrestling with. And it was a fascinating conversation. Often at these film festivals, we're given 10 minutes or 15 minutes to answer questions about the film, and usually a couple of those are about distribution or something rather ordinary to the filmmaking process. But for this one, they didn't care about that. They wanted to know what am I going to have to deal with when I'm out of school and really dealing with serious issues that have my life on the line, that have the life of my peers on the line. And it was we talked for 45 minutes, and we're only limited by the fact that I had another engagement that I had to get to. Otherwise, we would have talked deep into the night, I'm sure.
Well, that is fantastic. And you will be speaking, actually doing a Q&A after the screening of the film, which again is on Saturday the 23rd at 10:30 at the Annapolis Elementary School. But you're also bringing along one of your producers.
John Temple, who was executive producer, will be joining me for the Q&A after this screening, as will Nicole Van Dorn. And also I'll note that John will be on a panel after the film on Sunday about Joseph Pulitzer. John was a career newspaper editor, and he's been in journalism for decades, and will be an interesting addition to that conversation after that screening on Sunday, which I know John also wrote a really compelling piece about the Capitol Gazette shortly after the shooting last year for the Atlantic, which I recommend folks seek out as well.
The film Who Killed Lieutenant Van Dorn did actually premiere at the 2018 Monarch Film Festival, which was, I guess, late last year.
Can I correct you? We premiered at the Mill Valley Film Festival.
Okay. And that was in
October.
So late last year, and you've been making this film festival route for a couple months, and you're getting some awards. You've got the Gold Audience Award for Active Cinema at the Mill Valley Festival, and then the Best Documentary at the Monarch Film Festival.
Yeah, we're really pleased with how the film has been received. We've had big screenings, for close to 300 people. We've had tiny screenings for veterans clubs for as few as 8 or so. And I'm amazed that the conversation is always just as vibrant, no matter the size. And I'm always talking with people even after the Q&A sessions. And yes, it's really great to be recognized by the festivals and by the theater goers and get those awards. And sure, we'd love to have more, but ultimately it's about connecting with people who are there, get them talking, raise awareness about the plight of the ordinary service member, and hopefully prevent these kinds of accidents in the future. We've got this somewhat inefficient process of one screening at a time right now, but we're working towards finding a broader distribution partner so that we can really reach a mass audience as well. But those conversations are ongoing. I will add also that we did a podcast version of the film for Reveal, the podcast Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting. They're good friends of ours. So for folks that can't make the screening, there's also, or they want to supplement the screening, there's also an hour-long radio program they can find online.
Fantastic. And you can actually go online to vandornmovie.com, and Van Dorn Movie is pretty much the moniker for all of the social platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, to learn more about that. But I don't recommend you do that. I recommend you come to the Annapolis Film Festival. Not you, you're going to be here, but anybody who's listening to this to come to the Annapolis Film Festival. It does get underway on the 21st of March, which is on Thursday, but Who Killed Lieutenant Van Dorn will be premiering on March 23rd, which is Saturday at 10:30 a.m. at the Annapolis Elementary School. And I think it's fantastic that we're going to have both Zachary Stauffer, as well as a producer, and Nicole Van Dorn, who is obviously a subject of this movie, and the widow of Wesley Van Dorn, who was killed in January of 2014. A movie that anybody that has any interest in the Naval Academy, any interest in military history, really needs to see. Anybody that's really concerned about what we're doing, I think, is something that we need to see. And
I'll mention we have a review from the Nation magazine that says every concerned citizen needs to see the film. Lives depend on it. So if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is. So I really hope that everybody comes out. It's not a typical movie time, 10:30 in the morning on a Saturday, but it's a great way to get your day started and begin to check out other things at the festival as well.
I'll tell you, and you are going to be doing a coffee talk on...
I think on Saturday, before that at 9, and also a panel on all things documentary film on Friday at 10:30.
Friday at 10:30. So there will be plenty of opportunities to meet director Zachary Stauffer, who is the director for Who Killed Lieutenant Van Dorn. Again, a very deep film that's got a lot of deep roots and deep connections here in Annapolis and in the military. And I do thank you very much for your time this morning. And I look forward to meeting you when you come into town after your Whirlwind Festival tour. I can't wait to see the film.
Looking forward to meeting you too, John. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us to learn a little bit more about the films coming to the Annapolis Film Festival. Remember, tickets and passes can be obtained at AnnapolisFilmFestival.com. This is John Frenay, and I'll see you at the movies.